Um, Thanks everyone for joining us. Today's Wednesday, October 15th, our weekly Jupyter Frontends and kernels, Jupyter Server and kernels meeting. Um, we have a few items on the agenda, so we're recording this call for the YouTube channels, and that's where it will be updated. I think Ian is up first on the agenda.
Hi everyone, thanks Rozio. Yes, so I've posted in the notes my sort of semi-regular update on IPyKernel subshells. This is the important one. So I'll just go through it all and add a few more comments. So we released the 7.0.0 IPyKernel on Monday as planned. The key thing is there's a catch-all issue. It's IPyKernel issue 1438. That's there for anybody who wants to start through the train of history that's complicated or wants to report any problems or whatever. That's sort of the first point of contact. So if you take nothing else away from what I'm saying, it's that issue 1438 is the key thing to go to. So a day later, we had another release because Python 3.14 was broken, but that's now mostly working. There are a number of other issues that I'm working on, so there will be bug fixes, there will be bug fix releases to come. This has been a good example of sort of been looking for feedback for 2 years, but the best way to get it is to give people something that's a bit broken, and then you find out what they really want to do with it. I mean, it's not a thing one says with pride, but that's clearly the observation. I mean, so we have found, for example, found out some use of some subclassing of IPyKernel that I hadn't considered before, and it's sort of reasonable, but it's not tested anywhere. So of course it's broken. So at least now we have names of people who are interested in that. I wanted to to share out some thanks to other people that have been helping with the IPyKernel repo. It's been a bit of a quiet place for the last sort of year, but we've got things fixed and now running a bit better. And a personal comment from me, I'm hoping we can have faster release cadence in future in IPyKernel. Certainly JupyterLab and IPython are much more regular. It would be nice to do that rather than each release being a big, massive thing. So comment in the chat, elaborate on the Python 3.14 problems. Well, there's only one specific one that we've had to fix, which was, it's actually amusing. The Python 3.14 threading, now the threads take a new argument called context to control whether or not it's like, GIL enabled or not. Use of shared context, and that is stored internally as a self._context. The new IPyKernel release happened for one thread to be storing a self._context. So we were overriding that, and the whole thing was doing, random nightmare. So renaming the variable, it's nightmare to diagnose, renaming the variable fixes that problem. I think there are the only other 3.14 problems I know about is we don't have some libraries supporting it yet, so Qt6, so we've had to disable stuff there. There's one set of sub-process tests that are failing, but if you run the manual, if you run that code manually outside of PyTest, it's okay. So it feels more like it's a PyTest problem. Other comments? Yeah, I'm not talking about 3.14 free threading. There's still some other issues there. We need a Jupyter client release to fix there. I'm not fully aware of the issues. Yeah, maybe some more aggressive MyPy stuff would have found that. I guess we run MyPy on an older version, not the latest necessarily. And I personally didn't. I've been putting off this release for like, I don't know, a year. So I set a deadline of Monday, unfortunately, after the 3.14 release. I should, of course, have got it working with 3.14 first, but, there was a line in the sand, didn't do that. Yeah, could do it. We could always do it better in future. But I mean, it's an interesting question, isn't it? I'm not aware of any other repos I work on that aggressively run MyPy on the latest Python release, sort of pre-release time. The repos that do are ones that get 3.14 fully tested back in April, not doing it in October. I mean, maybe it would be nice if we could have a strategy in Jupyter of testing new releases a number of months before the release rather than after. But that's a that's a bigger question. Anyway, okay, thanks, Mike. Noted your comment about perhaps helping more aggressive stuff. I mean, there are improvements I'd like to make to the structure of the IPyKernel repo, but because I'm the new person on the team, I haven't been wanting to do that. But I think probably now I'm going to start pushing for those, and we can do things a bit more consistently with other repos. Okay. Any questions? Please go ahead.
I kind of had a general question, but I also have a bullet point, like I added to the agenda in the end. So maybe then would be a better time, up to everyone, I guess. So what is the implication for JupyterLab? Is JupyterLab should it work with 3.14? I just got some testimonials from my team that for some people it does not work, but maybe it's due to other extensions they're potentially using, even though some of them say they don't. I wasn't able to detect it on my own, and I tried to kind of create a binder, right, to have something that everyone can share and see for themselves, and wasn't able to put binder together. I could send a link in the chat to Mike's issue that has a link to my issue, where I tried to edit the binder /environment.yaml, and it still wasn't built. So yeah, if anyone has any information to share about how the latest JupyterLab release, is it working for you, or maybe it potentially pulls in 3.14 automatically and doesn't work because of that somehow in some environments, I would love to hear that. Thank you. And we can detract this discussion to the end potentially, or whatever. It's kind of tangent to this, right?
Sure. Okay, so I guess we're done for now. So thanks, Razio. We can move on, I think.
Oh, sorry. I wanted to ask a question. So we saw the performance changes, and I do not want to call them regressions yet because I do not understand that. But we saw that with IPyKernel 7, or the released final version, some tests are failing in JupyterLab, and you replied to me and explained that this is an architectural change, but I do not understand the full context there. Other things that we could do to make it faster, and what the future looks like. Do we accept this baseline performance penalty for lower spec machines or running just on one CPU core? Or could you potentially write up an issue with ideas that we could explore to make it faster?
I mean, yeah, we could fill an hour just discussing this now, I think, because I wasn't. Okay. No, we cannot run IPyKernel on a lower spec machine in a sensible way. So before I've touched any of the subshells, a single IPyKernel takes 8 threads anyway, because of all the ZMQ comms, and we've got server taking threads, and of course, lab could be on a different machine taking threads. So it's not an easy thing to run. Okay. I was really surprised by some of the some things not working in lab that sort of should do. And yeah, whether we call them regressions or not, fine, whatever. I think there's a disconnect between the stuff that we test in IPyKernel and how we test it in lab. And IPyKernel tests some nice functional stuff, and then lab, of course, does real world things which are really scary. So an example which is non-controversial, for example, if I run if I debug an IPyKernel, it could be version 6. When Lab starts it up, I'm getting every time between 10 and 15 kernel info request messages for a kernel startup. Some are on the shell channel, some are on the control channel. I think some of those are caused by Lab, some are caused by server, but we don't, in IPyKernel, we don't test that level of, of asking the same question, literally the same question, could be 15 times in a row. So when I see that, I think, oh, I'd really like to fix that. But of course, then we're expanding the surface of the things we have to address. The specific regressions, as far as I can tell, are all in tests that have historically been flaky, and I don't know why they're flaky. I'm not a lab expert, but yes, I have managed to make them more flaky, but without an understanding of why they're flaky in the first place, I find it difficult to help with that.
Yeah, I think you are referring to the inline completer test, for example. And I think we do understand this is because of a large volume of messages that it has been flaky, and IPyKernel not catching up. And that's and this and the debugger case, these are kind of trivial because we just do not send as many messages which are not necessary in a short window of time. What I am kind of more concerned, but again, I'm not sure how much of a real world impact it has, is that is something that we didn't see in the pre-releases, which is the JavaScript tests suite, which spawns real Jupyter server and IPyKernel. And while for the UI tests, you introduced a pin that used the pre-released version earlier, and those tests, we saw them fail, but didn't do the same thing for most of the JavaScript tests, except for one group. And after the release, all of them started timing out, which indicates like we are no longer able to spawn as many IPyKernels on these machines for some reason, and it's very difficult to debug that. So right now what we did is pinned it back to the previous version. And the question becomes, is this startup time or potentially a different issue something that there is a potential future in which we can address that, like other known things that could be optimized? Or is it like we accept that there is a much higher startup cost and rewrite our test suite to, I don't know, introduce explicit concurrency limitations so that they can pass?
Okay, thanks, Mike. I mean, I think you're too far ahead in your thoughts. I'm way behind you. So there are definitely problems with the IPyKernel release. There are fundamental issues with it. Some of it, there could be something drastically wrong that I don't know about that is not detected in our IPyKernel test, but needs to be fixed. Absolutely, that's all my fault. I'll have to find that. I'll have to fix that. There are specific problems you're talking about, and I can think of an excuse for each of those, and I can think of a reason why it is currently wrong. So, for example, startup time. Yeah, it should be take a little bit longer, but it shouldn't be like measurably a problem. But so for example, there could be the situation that we are starting up another thread, and in normal usage, we're not explicitly waiting for that thread to be really happy. A bit like the kernel info request, we constantly bang those because we don't know when things are ready for us. Perhaps in the IPyKernel test and manual tests, starting up the new thread, we only ever use it when it's available. But because Lab is sending these messages really quickly with no gap, it may be doing stuff too early before that thread is really happy. And maybe it just needs a simple check at my end that the thread is happy. So there are explanations about all the possible broken use cases that we have to, sort of go through. So one other point, of course, you've hit the problem of the first 7 pre-release bears no relationship to the other pre-releases. So 7.0.0 might have been A1 as well, was the now aborted NEIO re-implementation, which was partial NEIO, partial subshells, not complete, failing the IPy kernel tests, but happened to be good enough to pass the lab test. So that, yeah, that probably should have been yanked, I guess, but then maybe we need it for reference for future. Anyway, I guess we need to stop this, don't we? Because we're using up too much time. So maybe we can move on.
Yeah. Thanks for trying to answer. I know that these are questions without necessarily known answers just yet, but wanted to see like how much we could probe into this unknown.
So, okay, I guess, so one final thing. So the problems I'm dealing with this week are so fundamental that, half the users of IPyKernel are unhappy. I need to get those dealt with. Like, for example, you can't really use matplotlib event loops outside of lab for a trivial error. I need to fix these fundamental things before we narrow it down and start dealing with stuff that is very important to lab, but is, if you like, timing based or resource based. Okay, I'll stop. Rozio, back to you.
No worries, thanks, Ian. I think up next we have Jeremy.
Yeah, I wanted to bring a point about releases and more precisely how we publish packages to NPM. So probably a few of you have received an email from the NPM team saying that they are going to strengthen the security, and I guess it's related to the recent supply chain issues that they had like in the past few weeks. And I think in one of the phases, I think they plan to completely revoke the classic tokens, which I believe we use in a couple of places for the releaser. So fortunately, in July, they also announced support for the trusted publishers, just like PyPI, which is really, really great. So for JupyterLab and also all of the other repos, extensions, and so on, we should definitely move to use that as the default way to publish to NPM. So I opened an issue on JupyterLab, and normally it should work out of the box. So I tried with a simple extension. The only requirement is using NPM version 11, greater than 11.5.1, which is the case if we use Node.js version 24 or higher. So there is also a sibling PR in the maintainer tools, which has been approved. I've been using Node 24 locally for a while. No issue so far. So it was just to check if people were okay going forward and merge these PR and maintainer tools. What that means is once we make a new release, this pretty much affects every repos that use the base setup action from maintainer tools. So they will automatically get the new Node.js when their CI runs after the release, which was the case in the past when we updated the Node version. But it's just that now we're doing it from 22 to 24, we're skipping 22. And going forward with this would help a little bit with maintenance, because we could, of course, specify the Node version everywhere. We want to use the trusted publishers, but it's going to add a bit of toil, and we have to do that there almost everywhere. And it would be simpler to have that by default in base setup. So my idea was we could go ahead with this PR merged release, and then we see if there is like something that really breaks. We can always revert and make a new release afterwards to fix it. So yeah, just wanted to bring that up in case people had something to share about that. Yeah, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike asked about that. Yeah, there's a bundle, depending on how you get your Node.js, you might get a bundled version of Python. You might not get a bundled version of Python. If you're using, if you're using it from Ubuntu, you're going to get a working Python, but it's pretty easy for someone that's following an instruction of, go to nodejs.com and download Node, and go to python.org and download Python. You are not guaranteed to get two things that work together and yarn install, npm install, whatever. It ain't gonna work. So that's just, more multi-language excitement that is smoothed over on CI runners, but is not friendly locally. Yeah.
So this sounds like a problem for the future when we actually upgrade JupyterLab itself to use Node 24.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, yeah. It's difficult to reason about everything that is contained in that yarn lock. Let's put it that way.
I'm trying to reason about like what are we actually changing. So what we are changing is the Node version which runs tests, the Node version which compiles the playwright tests and runs them, and the Node version which compiles the final assets for release. We are not changing the things which are in log file. We are not changing contributing instruction. We are not changing the lower minimum required version.
Well, if you ain't testing it, it's not the minimum. The specific case is gonna be Galata with its enormous abandoned standard JS whatever dependency that uses the Cairo bindings. That's the one that I've seen just kick people to the ground and not let them get up. And that's just an upstream packaging thing, like it's not, standard's not going to fix it because they're not making changes. So, the getting that out of there would probably be the best, because we've got 1,000 other ways to generate some bar charts. Anyhow, super off topic. This is, it's not affecting me daily. It's just a thing that I've seen.
So I was also thinking about maybe you could try to update the CI of lab independently of this, just to check how it behaves.
I did.
By just bumping.
I did that before approving your PR, and I think it passes.
Oh. Okay.
But I didn't do a full run. I only like bumped the version, Node version for base setup in JS tests. It would be interesting to see if
on your fork.
on my fork.
Okay.
Which gave me some kind of confidence that it shouldn't break the extensions and everything. We can always like revert that change, and if we like tag a new version and get complaints that it's breaking extensions, we just revert that to the previous default.
Yeah. I mean, I think the main reason to move forward with this quickly was that in their email, I think they mentioned something about like revoking tokens early November, which is just in 2 weeks. It's pretty tight. And since we have a lot of repos with the npm token, if we could at least migrate as soon as possible. And it's not even talking about the most fun part in all of this, which is going to be clicking 105 times to set up the trusted publishers for each.
Write the playwright script.
Well, I thought about this, but even as a regular user, like as a human, I got a few captchas while doing it on a notebook, which has only 12 packages published to NPM. I think I
So
got
now you need an
very
LLM agent to solve the captchas as well.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Jeremy, how
I don't know.
how long did it take you to do a single migration? Like if we just sat down and powered through it.
Yeah,
105 is not impossible, and if you got a few people in the room, showed us how to do it, and treated us like a Mechanical Turk type of service.
Yeah, it's going to be very mechanical, especially if your browser saves, like form input, then you don't have to type everything. You can just, click and select the drop down, and that's what happened to me. I don't know, like maybe it takes 10 seconds per package.
So that's probably not worth automating unless the automation cuts down on errors. Like
I think
I'm happy to
it would be
join a
easy
half an hour meeting where 3 or 4 of us just like power through it as a one-time
Yeah,
thing.
otherwise I was wondering maybe the NPM team would be able to do that for us if we explain them. Like, maybe they have an internal tool to automate this. I haven't found any API like NPM NPI to do that. Maybe I'm not sure there is anything like this that exists.
You're certainly not the only one with hundreds of packages.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah. But yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Next step, yeah.
Next step, I think would be, so if we have like a lab release soon, I will update Notebook and make a new Notebook release with this to make sure it works with Notebook because it has like because it publishes multiple packages, and if it does, then I think we could move ahead with Lab and do the same there. For so far, I've only tried it with a single extension, so it's only one tarball. But it doesn't. So in the meantime, we can still do this setup. So we can still do the setup, but not like set the highest security toggle, which is to disable every token. We can still keep it for now, so we can have both. And then we turn on like what they call maximum security, which is I think disabling token usage.
Well, I'm happy to hop on if you wanted to organize something. You can like walk us through it, and then a couple of us can power through it and make it so that you don't have to do all 105 packages manually.
Yeah, I posted a few screenshots in that issue just to log a little bit like exploration on that. So people are interested.
Do you want to take point then on organizing it based on your comfort level with the migration and what you think we can do?
Yeah, I think it can wait for a couple of days still. Like if it works with Notebook, maybe we can talk about that again next week during the call, and then follow up with a big setup party if people want to take part of it. But yeah, thanks
Awesome.
for offering help.
Hey, is it Matthias now?
Hey. Yeah, basically, I only have one quick question because we met the same people who were here last week talking about the accessibility stuff. And so since we wanted to move ahead a little bit, syncing our mutual accessibility projects, I was wondering where we can put that, discussion and information, whether we can use the same repository, that is used by the accessibility group. I think that's the Jupyter/accessibility, or whether there is a different place for this.
I think that would be a good price.
Is anyone
Now,
here from that accessibility group, by the way, or would be a good
I don't
person
think so. The way accessibility group works currently, there are no separate meetings anymore, and instead they are joining the first call of the month. So usually, if you wanted to make sure that you broadcast on a synchronous meeting where more accessibility-oriented folks join, I would suggest in 1 to 3 weeks' time. That would be the first Wednesday of the month on the 5th of November. But otherwise, I think.
Ely, are you on that sub project now currently?
So I think the last representative was Gabriel, and Gabriel stepped down from Jupyter Frontends Council, and I think basically this sub project itself was not very active. I do not have permissions to the Jupyter/accessibility, but I'm sure there is someone on this call who has. So if you wanted to lead and reorganize this repository for tracking issues or for sharing resources, that sounds like a good idea. And certainly there are other people interested who could help by reviewing or coordinating.
You should be able to email the Accessibility Council, which should have. I posted the email in the chat. So the way things work typically, and I don't have access to this email list, so I don't know for sure, but is that these email lists are open for general members of the public to email, and it's a way to contact the leaders of a particular subproject. And so emailing that list should go to the people that are currently admins in the subproject on the subproject council. That's a way to contact people, and then you can also tag them in the GitHub interface, the accessibility team.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think I will write them a mail, and maybe I guess it's low damage if I open an issue in that accessibility group as well. So
absolutely,
okay,
and you can CC the
sounds
team just to make sure it gets in people's notification boxes as well.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's it from my end.
Okay, so I think that's my turn. So I wanted to give heads up that I plan to release a next beta. I hope to do that today, but still didn't have time to test and merge all the pull requests, which are ready for review. So probably we'll do that tomorrow, which will hopefully also help Jeremy with testing the trusted publishers downstream on Notebook. And a small win is from the last week is that we started testing on Firefox, which turned out to be pretty easy with the recent Playwright upgrades. So previously it was not possible to run tests without snapshots, but a couple of versions back they introduced like ignore snapshots configuration, which allows us to reuse most of the tests. And basically, anytime I write new tests, I try to not add snapshots unless they are required. So if I'm just testing logic, just writing the code for testing what changes, and then this test, the expectations will be validated both on Chrome and Firefox. Maybe we could test snapshots on both Chromium and Firefox in the future. But right now it feels like just the amount of snapshots that we have, it would make the cost of reviewing the snapshots for any tiny visual adjustments probably prohibitive. So maybe there should be first an effort to work through the snapshots and narrowing them down, removing snapshots where they are not necessary and where an expectation, for example, using the ARIA expectations, so accessibility tree comparison. If that could do their job, then maybe we should use that instead. But that's for the future. And
Oh,
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
That is the win on Playwright versus WebDriver stuff, because there's still no standardized access to the accessibility tree over the WebDriver pipe. So yeah, there would be a lot to be said for that. But I mean, on some stuff, yeah, what are you going to do? You know, like the mermaid stuff, the worst of all possible cases. You're drawing a picture. You got to see if the picture is like the picture. And if it's not like the picture, only a screenshot is going to tell you, because SVGs are garbage for accessibility. So yeah, it is what it is.
And I'm sure that Firefox and Chrome render they slightly differently. There's a couple of pixels which will just fail the comparison. Anyways, so for any new future PR feature enhancement PRs, I'm tagging them for 4.6. I saw that there's new exciting work on the debugger, just explicitly saying that if someone disagrees and wants the PR to be merged sooner, like I'm happy to talk about this, but the default is 4.6. And I saw that some people open pull requests which include a bug fix and a big enhancement. So if you want the bug fix to be merged, please extract that to a separate request. That will make it easier. And the final heads up I wanted to announce publicly is that I've updated the council membership for Jupyter Frontends based on the check-in that was a couple of months back, almost half a year back. And that pull request was merged. What followed was that the automation that we had for updating Team Compass was not working. So this is now no longer using hard-coded tokens. There is a dedicated GitHub app, which is a very nice pattern. I highly recommend that. Use that on JupyterLab desktop and use that in the council repo as well, which is private, but the JupyterLab desktop automation is not. So if you don't have access to the council repo, go to the JupyterLab desktop. It is very nice because the bots or the apps can be installed scoped to specific repositories. So even though you are giving higher level of privileges for them to do the job, it is actually safer than using tokens, especially the old tokens. And related to that, we just welcomed Tarshan to the Jupyter Frontends Council. I know that there's more people regularly contributing, and if someone thinks that someone should be nominated, I highly encourage you all to think about that from time to time, so that like we keep the membership up to date and people who are engaged can contribute more at a different level, just writing code, but also sharing their opinion, voting on stuff.
I'll also mention election season is coming up for the EC, and maybe do we elect every year for the SSC? Anyway, the point is having that council list up to date feeds into the election because being on that list means you get a vote in the EC election and obviously in our SSC election.
Yeah, for the SSC, I think it's still half a year for the next one.
Okay. Do I go next? So talking about keeping the council list up to date, I was doing some cleanup and the council lists. You can see in the notes, and I'll paste here in the chat as well. The EC is looking into migrating all the council lists over to our Google Workspaces Jupyter.org domain. So it becomes something like Jupyter-Frontends Council or something at Jupyter.org instead of at googlegroups.com. And so we're trying to do this across all the subcouncil lists and everything to migrate things to Jupyter.org for more centralized discovery and access. And hey, we get the cool Jupyter.org domain name, etc. We need some help here because right now these lists are sort of scattered around and the EC itself doesn't have access to all of these lists. So 2 call outs. One is please update your list to reflect your current council membership. This is what Mike was talking about for the front ends council, but since other sub-projects are on this call as well, I'll prompt them, the server, etc., to make sure your lists are updated. And then the second is if you're an admin, if you go to this issue that I posted in the chat or in the notes, you'll see we've listed all of the council lists that feed into the Union of Councils, which is the electing body for the EC. And you'll see a bunch of check marks there. The unchecked ones are council lists that so far we haven't been able to add Linux Foundation project managers to. The idea here is this migration we anticipate being mostly done by the Linux Foundation project managers that we have. And so like no sweat on the community type of thing. But we do need to add them to the lists in order for them to carry out this migration and, set up a timeline for the migration, et cetera. So if you have access to any of these unchecked Google groups, if you can follow the instructions above or in an email that I just sent out to all of these lists, to add 2 email addresses for our Linux Foundation project managers as owners on the list, then they can set up the migration and communicate out about the migration, etc. They also need to know the email addresses on these lists because they're going to be managing the EC election that's going to be hopefully starting fairly soon. And so another reason for us to try to centralize these list of addresses that comprise the Union of Councils. So if you have admin access on one of these lists, like the Jupyter server list, who else people might have access here? Oh, the Software Steering Council list, etc. If you could add 2 email addresses for our Linux Foundation, and the notebook list, the Linux Foundation project managers, that would be fantastic. Thank you, Mike. The email I sent out has the 2 email addresses to add.
It doesn't. It actually, for some reason, these addresses are censored. They do not render in your email.
The email
At least
doesn't
not
render
in
them.
Google
Okay,
Chrome.
I will post them into the chat.
I'm copying them from the frontends. So I have the addresses.
Yes. Okay.
But FYI, they didn't work.
Okay. Very interesting. If there's anybody else doing another list, Mike, you can post it in the chat. It's Naomi Washington and Tom Slanda's email address. Yeah, there's one. And then the other one is Tom Slanda. Yep. Perfect. Those are the addresses to add. And the second thing, and again, this is just org cleanup. I noticed the JupyterLab list looked fairly active still. That was superseded, I think, by the front ends list. So I changed a bunch of settings in the JupyterLab list to annotate it as inactive, and I restricted posting to it and all this kind of stuff. I noticed it as an old membership list because we abandoned it essentially, right? When we moved over to the front ends list. I could not do the same for the notebook list, the Jupyter Notebook list, Jupyter Notebook Google group. If someone has admin access to the Jupyter Notebook Google group, if they can set it to, restrict the posting on it, add an annotation in the description saying it's been superseded by the Jupyter Frontends list, etc., just to make sure that it's clear that it's an inactive list and should not be used or cannot be used, and that the Jupyter Frontends list is the right list to use. That would be great to help communicate out to the world all these confusing Google groups that we have. Mike, are you on the Jupyter Notebook list? No. Is there anybody here that's an admin on it? Jeremy, maybe?
I am, but I'm not sure if I'm an admin. I can check.
Okay. I'm happy to change all the settings and stuff like that to declare it an inactive list and supersede it by Jupyter Frontends to match what I did on the JupyterLab list. If you want to add me as an admin to it, I think I'd need to be an owner on it. Or you can do it, either one. And if you can add Naomi Washington and Tom Slanda to that list, that would be fantastic. Rosio,
I'm only a manager.
Oh,
I'm not an owner.
Can you see who the owners are?
You can still add them. You just cannot make them owners, I think.
Oh, okay.
You might be able to change the settings as well. Yeah, and Rosio, the Jupyter DEI list is another list that we need to update. I don't know, Rosio, if you have the DEI owner access.
I can check.
Okay. Anyway, we're coordinating to work on this issue that I posted in the chat and in our notes, so feel free to follow up there. We're trying to essentially centralize access and discovery and move our infrastructure over to more centralized infrastructure, I think, which will help a lot of places. Thanks, Mike, for the SSC list. That's all for me.
I think up next is Andre.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to discuss if JupyterLab, the latest install, is working for you, like pre-release or release version. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. Do you mean in general? Yes.
Okay, good. So again, why I'm sorry, I had some mix-ups with the mic. I'm not sure what you guys heard or not. So I was saying that I had some testimonials from teammates that for them it haven't worked, but I guess it could have been also connected with.
So was it 3.14 issue?
It seems so, yes. It seems it was connected with 3.14 based on their testimonials, but I couldn't reproduce it. I tried and I couldn't. And also, Mike, as you've seen maybe my comments, I couldn't make the binder work, but it seems it's more of a problem with repo to binder than with like JupyterLab per se.
Yeah.
So anyway, no, for you all it seems to work, right? Or this problem with IPy kernel, is it supposed to be potentially pulled in for new installations of JupyterLab or not? Not really. Okay. Okay. So we do expect potentially JupyterLab currently to be broken for at least some like.
No, it's already fixed. Like
No.
7.01 has already fixed the issue of IPy kernel with Python 3.14. Now, if someone uses three-threaded Python 3.14, this is a different issue. Potentially it will work, but not in the three-threaded mode. But in general, I think new installs should all work fine with any Python version, at least on the surface level. There might be some specific bugs with kernel usage due to IPy kernel release, or there might be bugs in JupyterLab due to, like, if someone installs a beta version. But in general, CI and experience indicates that it is working all correctly.
I see. Thank you. Yeah, I've seen about the 314T, about the threaded Python. I've seen an issue about that. So the IPy kernel problem would manifest in like notebooks not being able to connect to kernel, right? Because that is what. Okay, yeah, that checks out. And Mike, you mentioned the version of sorry, 7.0b, something like that. Is it a version of notebook? 701. IPy kernel 701. Okay, I see. And could you elaborate for me, like, oh, so just the latest version of the IPy kernel is getting pulled into like JupyterLab or other related packages. So
Yes.
just the latest release would fix it. So if someone has that problem, I should probably advise them to just like do a fresh install, right?
Or update IPy kernel.
Or update IPy kernel. Okay, yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. This helps a lot. Thank you.
I think to Ian's comment that JupyterLab does not pin IPy kernel, I think we do have a lower version pin on something like 5 something. I don't know if we should have an upper version pin.
We had some pins at one point, back when Steve was running the ship, and you know what you end up getting, like, so lab is an application, yes, absolutely, but the way that it interacts with someone's environment makes it more like a library. So, you know, if you had yeah, right, yeah, if you can't, if it takes an act of God to install something that, you know, isn't in there, which pip, okay, pip will let you sneak some crap through. Conda, very hard. UV, no, I don't think so. I don't think it'll let you just ignore dips. Maybe it will. Maybe that's recent. But yeah, we're inner package stuff that we don't have a sound reason for makes it very hard to keep things running. So Ian had mentioned the stately release pace of IPy kernel. That's kind of great. That's kind of cool that you can build something and run it for a long time. Like, it's, you know, it's closer to a long-term support because we fix the things, we fix them for the versions of Python, we slowly deprecate versions of Python. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to feel on that one. Ian says no, and if Ian's toting the bail and willing to fix stuff, then we should go with Ian's gut. Now, what has been mentioned before is, if you look at how some of the other distribution kind of things work, for example, that company that starts with A that makes Conda packages, you know, they have an installable package that is a set of pins that's named after their company. And if we were testing that, and that could handle having pre-releases in it and stuff like that, and that was the Jupyter package, and we had a way to release those frequently, and it probably had Calver, and you really had to pass all the tests for that to actually go out, then we'd be talking about something different. So, you know, if the Jupyter meta package had it's nice when I mean, it's still 1.0, I think, or something like that, which is crazy because it doesn't, I mean, what does that mean? You know, centralizing stuff around that package and its ability to give you a known set of things would give people a stable thing to build on, which they could then relax and then, you know, change things that they want. But it would at least give you that baseline set of things that, yo, we tested these on all the platforms that we could, on, you know, all kinds of different places, when installed from pip, I guess, I don't know. And then we repackage that, and that's a thing that downstreams on whatever, on, you know, distros and Conda and all that could do. That's how you could get some of these guarantees with a project that's made out of 50 little teams. But JupyterLab just saying, nope, can't use IPyKernel 7, that's pretty brutal for the people that are over on that sub team, which is now part of this sub team, whatever. You know?
Yeah, I guess like JupyterLab desktop, that would be a different conversation. But yeah.
Well, I mean, all the problems that come with trying to be that all the way down with the security stuff and all that, even just something at the pip level. So if you had, for example, keep Jupyter the way that it is, the Jupyter meta package on PyPy, great, awesome, wicked. Offer an extra, which extras are brutal because they don't work really over time. And now we've got another thing, dependency groups, and those don't work either for what you think they do. So anyhow, but if there was a Jupyter square braces recommended, right? Or recommended, Q3 FY 2025, whatever, and that gave you a set of packages, and those are ones that we tested together, that would be value add and give us a firm place to stand with good provenance of where that came from, where it was tested, and what you could expect to see. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Because once it's in a dependency, you can actually, and I don't think it would be JupyterLab, right? I mean, I think because Jupyter would need to be able to set those things, not JupyterLab. It can't just be a front end thing. So, because JupyterLab CI is already very complex. The Jupyter meta package CI could be entirely focused on, can we as an ecosystem ship something good? That would be the story there.
I don't mean to cut off the conversation and just we are a little bit over the top of the hour, so I think maybe we can stop the recording. I believe it's still going.